Kenneth Morhart was a well-known, dedicated farmer in Spring Valley, Saskatchewan. He's the husband of Darlene and was a father of 2 at the time. He harvested crops and took care of livestock. But one stormy morning in May of 1972, his time and effort was put to the test. It was thundering and lightning at 8:30 in the morning while the Morharts were busy doing chores. The kids, Rodney and Debbie, stayed in the barn where Ken and Darlene milked cows. Once they were done, Ken continued down to the slough where he cleaned out some pails. Meanwhile, Darlene had started to gather the kids from the barn. Then the most unthinkable happened. Rodney, the oldest, remembered the crack of thunder that shook the walls of the barn. Sensing that Ken was in danger, Darlene ran out of the barn, telling the kids to stay. She proceeded to the slough where she found him lying on the ground, his clothes tattered, his skin burnt, and his hair singed. She was crying as she took off what remained of his clothes, and both her and her brother Matt hauled him to the hospital. Ken woke up a few days later, lying in a hospital bed where he would stay for the next 3 weeks. They told him, or tried to tell him, that he had been struck by lightning. He was deaf in both of his ears. He could hear the voices, but he couldn't understand them. His eardrums had been patched, but they couldn't fix the inner ear damage. He was then fitted for hearing aids. He also had a big burn on his shoulder, and had a bad burn on his ankle that took 3 months to heal. Over the years, Ken has depended on his ability to read lips. It was hard to communicate properly, and it was easy to get words wrong. His hearing aids did help, but when he tried to hear strangers, it was extremely difficult to understand them. He said people had to know he was deaf. This challenge also affected his work on the farm. He couldn't hear the machinery to see if it was working properly or not. His doctors had advised him not to stand on anything tall, like a grain bin, because his balance had been affected when he was struck. Could you imagine not being able to understand people? It would be so frustrating, like being trapped in a square room with only your thoughts, and an unsolvable puzzle sitting in front of you. He couldn't understand radios, TVs, or the telephone. One thing that did help him was when his brother-in-law, Brian McManus, got a caption device for the TV in 1980. He remembers it made things a lot better, and he couldn't believe the language. It was definitely hard for the whole family, especially the kids, although they never treated him differently besides talking a bit louder and clearer. But Ken was soon dismissing himself from going to functions and meetings. He found it was too noisy for him. Darlene was the one who went to the kids' meetings and activities while Ken worked on the farm. But eventually he learned to accept the fact that he'll never hear properly again, and to go on from there. His first hearing aid cost $300 apiece, and he could get them changed every 5 years. Most of the cost is covered by their medical insurance company, but they had troubles in the beginning. This was due to the fact that the hearing aid could easily be worn out by all the dust out on the farm. One day, he had gone in for repairs on his hearing aid. That's when a lady named Pat, who had helped my grandpa numerous times, introduced the idea of the cochlear implant. The cochlear implant is a surgically implanted electronic device that is placed close to the hearing nerve. There is also a sound processor, which selectively filters sound into channels and sends electrical sound signals through a thin cable to the transmitter. The transmitter is a coil held into position by a magnet placed behind the external ear. Once he knew more about it, he was sent to a specialist in Saskatoon, and he had the implant done on his left ear in 2007, and he wears a hearing aid on his right ear. Even to this day, his loss of hearing is a challenge. It's still easy to lose track of a conversation, and it's easy to miscommunicate with someone. It makes you feel happy for what you do have, he had said, and he's right. It's a shame we take a lot of things for granted, especially when life can go to such extreme measures to take them away. This is one of the reasons why I chose not to have any music in my photo story.